The Galactic Concord Assembly Hall was built to intimidate. Its ceiling vanished into artificial darkness, its walls curved with the slow arrogance of a civilization that believed it would never fall. Thousands of species had spoken here. Thousands had been judged. Some had vanished afterward. Commander Elias Rourke stood at the center of the human delegation platform, hands folded behind his back, posture relaxed enough to be mistaken for indifference. He had learned long ago that appearing calm unsettled predators more than defiance ever could. High Marshal XYRRKAL rose from the Vorth Dominion dais, armored plates shifting with ceremonial weight. His mandibles clicked once, a sound amplified across the chamber. Again, XYRRKAL said, human vessels interfere with lawful Dominion security operations. Again, human colonies claim victimhood. Again, you request sympathy while refusing oversight. A low murmur rolled through the assembly. Rourke kept his eyes forward. He had heard this speech before, delivered with different inflections, different accusations, always ending the same way. The deaths were never discussed in numbers. Commander Rourke, the presiding arbiter said, its voice layered with harmonic resonance. Do you dispute the High Marshal's statement? Rourke stepped forward. The lights adjusted subtly, centering on him. He did not raise his voice. We dispute the definition of lawful, he said. And the implication that restraint equals consent. XYRRKAL's mandibles flared wider. Your outer systems host pirate elements. We neutralize them. Collateral damage is regrettable, but expected. 3 million civilians lived on Kestrel Reach, Rourke replied. They were farmers. The chamber stilled, then resumed its quiet churn. Numbers meant different things to different species. To some, 3 million was an inconvenience. To others, a rounding error. The arbiter inclined its head. The Concord recognizes the loss. However, the Dominion acted within its security mandate. Humanity remains under probationary protection. You are not authorized to militarize disputed regions. Rourke nodded once. We haven't. That drew a few glances. XYRRKAL leaned forward. Then perhaps you should consider compliance instead of implication. Your species has benefited from Concord mercy for centuries. You exist because we allowed it. Rourke felt the familiar pressure behind his eyes, the memory of old briefings, old scars, old footage sealed under layers of classification. Earth had learned early what mercy looked like when defined by others. He activated his wrist console. A small icon pulsed red, visible only to him. Another signal. He did not react. High Marshal, Rourke said, may I ask a procedural question? XYRRKAL tilted his head, amused. Ask. If a probationary species suffers repeated attacks, Rourke said, and the Concord declines intervention, at what point does that species lose the obligation to remain passive? The arbiter processed for a moment. There is no such provision. Then there is no protection, Rourke replied. A ripple moved through the hall. XYRRKAL clicked again, sharper this time. Careful, human. You tread close to insubordination. Rourke met the Vortha's gaze. I tread exactly where I intend. He tapped the console again. The red icon multiplied. 2. Then 3. The colonel in him counted automatically. Behind his calm expression, memories surfaced uninvited. Earth's early centuries. Atmospheric fires. Gravity that crushed invaders and defenders alike. Wars that rewrote coastlines and taught humanity a single enduring lesson: survival favored those who prepared in silence. Humanity had not entered the galaxy weak. It had entered exhausted. So it chose patience. It dismantled visible fleets, signed treaties, accepted limits no one else would tolerate. Not because it had to, but because watching was more valuable than acting. Commander Rourke, the arbiter said. Do you have evidence of Dominion escalation beyond prior incidents? Rourke inhaled slowly. Yes. XYRRKAL laughed, the sound echoing like metal struck with bone. Fabrication is unbecoming, human. Rourke didn't respond to him. He projected the data instead. 3 star maps appeared above the central dais. Each glowed red. Kestrel Reach, Rourke said. Haven Point. Luton's Drift. Silence followed, heavier this time. These were not border skirmishes, Rourke continued. They were synchronized strikes. Communication jammers deployed before weapons fire. Evacuation corridors targeted first. The Arbiter's tone shifted. This indicates premeditation. XYRRKAL's mandibles tightened. Dominion fleets act independently when threatened. By hospitals? Rourke asked quietly. No one answered. His console vibrated again. This time, the icon went dark. A single word replaced it. Silent. Rourke closed his eyes for half a second. When he opened them, something had changed, not in his posture, but in the room. Predators sensed shifts like that. The Concorde did too. Another colony? The Arbiter asked. Yes, Rourke said. Which means this session is no longer theoretical. XYRRKAL straightened. You will withdraw that accusation. Rourke looked up at the towering hall, at the watching species, at the systems that had weighed humanity for generations and found it acceptable to bleed. No, he said. I will clarify our position. The Arbiter hesitated. You are recognized. Briefly. Rourke stepped fully into the light. For 212 years, he said, Earth has complied with every restriction placed upon it. We dismantled fleets. We limited research. We accepted inspections that compromised our security. We did this because we believed coexistence required trust. He paused. No one interrupted. That belief has cost us worlds. XYRRKAL's voice cut in. Is this a declaration of war? Rourke turned toward him. No. This is a notification. The hall seemed to contract, attention narrowing. Humanity has reached the limit of courtesy, Rourke said. This session marks the end of our participation under false assumptions. The Arbiter's voice was careful now. Explain. Rourke met its gaze. You believe we are restrained because we are incapable, he said. That belief is incorrect. We are restrained because we chose to be. He deactivated the projection. The stars vanished, leaving only him. This is Earth's final diplomatic session conducted as a probationary species, Rourke said evenly. Further aggression will be interpreted accordingly. XYRRKAL snarled. You threaten the Concorde? Rourke shook his head once. We warned it. The chamber remained silent long after he stepped back. Silence lingered after Rourke's last words, the kind that pressed against the skin. The Galactic Concorde had heard threats before, dramatic declarations from species that mistook volume for power. This felt different. The room did not erupt. It waited. High Marshal XYRRKAL broke first. You speak in riddles, human, he said, mandibles flexing. Your warning lacks substance. Rourke did not answer immediately. He raised his wrist and authorized a restricted channel. The air above the central dais rippled, resolving into a layered projection, data streams stacked with deliberate restraint. This is not a threat, Rourke said. It's context. The first image was ancient. A blue world wrapped in storms, continents scarred by fire. Atmospheric readings scrolled beside it, pressure values climbing into lethal margins. Our gravity averages 30% higher than Concorde standard, Rourke said. Our weather exceeds acceptable combat tolerances. Our biosphere evolved to kill anything that failed to adapt. A few delegates shifted. Environmental data was not impressive to most species. Many hailed from extremes. Rourke anticipated the dismissal. So did ours, XYRRKAL said. You are not unique. Rourke inclined his head. Correct. What followed is. The projection changed. Cities burned. Orbital debris cascaded like meteor rain. The timestamps jumped erratically. Before first contact, Rourke continued, humanity nearly erased itself. We learned early how to wage total war. More importantly, we learn why not to. The Arbiter's voice softened, curious despite itself. This history was omitted from your accession archives. Intentionally, Rourke replied. The next layer unfolded, diagrams of technology never submitted for review. Gravity lenses. Compact singularity stabilizers. Drives that folded space not by tearing it, but persuading it to move aside. These designs were deemed unethical by our own standards, Rourke said. So we buried them. Not destroyed. Archived. XYRRKAL let out a harsh click. Convenient claims. Rourke touched the console again. Across the hall, every independent sensor flickered, then recalibrated. Your instruments have been operating under adjusted baselines, he said. For your safety. A low, uncertain murmur spread. Several delegates began checking private readouts. None contradicted him. Human defensive stations, Rourke went on, are not weapons. They are anchors. Reference points allowing us to move assets without detection. The Arbiter stiffened. Assets which have not been declared. Correct. XYRRKAL rose to his full height. This violates every Concord statute. Rourke finally looked directly at him. So did the annihilation of our colonies. The projection shifted again. This time it showed empty space, vast, quiet, ordinary. Then markers appeared, hundreds of them, forming patterns too deliberate to be random. These are human fleets, Rourke said. They are not approaching your borders. They have always been there. The hall erupted into noise. Voices overlapped, languages colliding in confusion and disbelief. The Arbiter struck its resonant staff, forcing order with difficulty. XYRRKAL stared at the display. You expect us to believe you hid armadas inside our territory? No, Rourke said. We hid them where you never bothered to look. He zoomed in. The markers clustered around gravity wells, rogue stars, unstable regions flagged as uninhabitable. We learned something studying you, Rourke continued. Your species values efficiency. You avoid waste. You never linger where survival seems impractical. A pause. We do. The Arbiter's tone sharpened. Why reveal this now? Rourke exhaled slowly. Because patience has become complicity. Another signal pulsed through his console. This one was not silent. It carried intent. XYRRKAL recovered his composure enough to sneer. Even if this were true, you still lack the authority to dictate terms. Rourke nodded. That's why this isn't a negotiation. The projection split. On one side, Vorth fleet formations gathered near human space. On the other, invisible vectors overlaid reality, trajectories intersecting with brutal precision. You mobilized 3 hours ago, Rourke said. Your admirals assumed we wouldn't notice. XYRRKAL froze. We noticed, Rourke added. We always notice. The Arbiter's voice dropped. High Marshal, is this accurate? XYRRKAL hesitated a fraction too long. Preparatory measures, he said. Nothing more. Rourke leaned forward slightly. Stand them down. Laughter echoed from the Vorth dais, strained but loud. Or what? XYRRKAL demanded. Rourke straightened. Or we stop pretending to be courteous. The words carried no heat. That was what unsettled the room. A delegate from a crystalline species spoke, voice trembling. What does that mean, exactly? Rourke considered the question, then answered honestly. It means we will end the conflict without spectacle. We will not scorch worlds or enslave populations. We will simply remove your ability to harm us. XYRRKAL's eyes burned. You would cripple an empire. We would preserve lives, Rourke said. Including yours. The Arbiter processed silently, ancient mind racing through consequences. This course would destabilize the Concord. It already is, Rourke replied. You just haven't accepted it. The projection vanished. The room felt smaller without it. Rourke clasped his hands behind his back again. Earth does not seek dominance. We seek an end to testing. XYRRKAL bared his teeth. You expect obedience. No, Rourke said. We expect a choice. The Arbiter finally spoke. What happens if the Dominion refuses? Rourke met its gaze. Then Chapter 3 begins. The silence that followed was not disbelief. It was fear. The Fourth Dominion did not stand down. Confirmation arrived 30 seconds after the Concord session recessed, delivered through channels that no longer pretended neutrality. Fourth fleets crossed human border markers in full formation, weapons primed, broadcasts saturated with ritual declarations of dominance. The galaxy watched, expecting escalation, spectacle, noise. Earth answered with silence. Commander Elias Rourke stood alone in the observation chamber above Luna's dark side, hands resting on a console older than most of the treaties now failing in real time. No alarms sounded. No crews shouted commands. The room felt almost reverent. Authorization confirmed, a calm voice said. It was human, unembellished, advisory rather than commanding. All anchor nodes synchronized. Rourke nodded. Proceed. Across light years, reality adjusted. Fourth vessels accelerated into firing range, and stopped. Not violently. Not dramatically. Their momentum dissolved, bled away into folded gravity fields that refused to release them. Crews slammed into restraints as inertial dampeners failed to compensate for physics rewritten mid-thought. Weapon systems locked, then powered down, their energy siphoned into containment loops they could not access. On the bridge of the Fourth flagship, High Marshal XYRRKAL roared orders that went nowhere. His fleet hung suspended in space, perfectly intact, perfectly helpless. What have you done? He demanded, voice cracking through an open channel. Rourke answered immediately. We removed your capacity to continue. You said you would not destroy us. And we haven't, Rourke replied. Check your life support. Your power reserves. Your civilian worlds. XYRRKAL hesitated. Reports flooded his command display. No explosions. No planetary strikes. Not even collateral interference. Fourth space remained untouched, except for its warships, frozen like insects in amber. This is impossible, XYRRKAL said. It's efficient, Rourke corrected. Throughout the Dominion, similar scenes unfolded. Fleets stalled. Command relays collapsed into static. Admirals found themselves alive, conscious, and irrelevant. Entire armadas neutralized without a single hull breach. 9 minutes after the first shot would have been fired, the war ended. The Galactic Concord reconvened in emergency session. Panic rippled openly now, stripped of protocol and pride. Species that once debated millennia with cold detachment now spoke over one another, voices sharp with uncertainty. Rourke appeared at the center dais again, unchanged, as if no time had passed at all. The Fourth offensive is concluded, he said. No casualties reported. The Arbiter's voice trembled. Explain. Human intervention protocols prioritize containment, Rourke replied. We study before we act. We act only once. A delegate cried out, you could do this to all of us. Rourke met the accusation evenly. We could have done it centuries ago. That truth landed harder than any threat. XYRRKAL was granted the floor from his immobilized flagship, his image projected large, mandibles slack with disbelief. You spared us, he said slowly. Why? Rourke did not answer immediately. He glanced toward Earth, a distant blue curve framed against darkness. Because we remember what it costs to win the wrong way, he said. Because dominance breeds resistance. Because extinction solves nothing. The Arbiter leaned forward. Then state your terms. Rourke clasped his hands behind his back. First, he said, all hostile actions against human territory cease permanently. Agreed signals flashed from multiple delegations. Second, Rourke continued, the probationary status of Earth is revoked. Effective immediately. The Arbiter hesitated, then inclined its head. Accepted. Third, Rourke said, the Concord will establish an enforcement council. Humanity will hold permanent oversight authority, not to rule, but to intervene when restraint is mistaken for weakness. Silence followed, then reluctant assent. XYRRKL swallowed. And the Dominion? Rourke looked at him. Your fleets will be released in stages. Your command structure will remain intact. You will retain sovereignty. XYRRKL's voice dropped to a whisper. And if we defy you again? Rourke's expression did not change. Then we will not speak next time. The Arbiter struck its staff, sealing the accords. History rewrote itself without ceremony. As sessions dissolved and delegates departed, Rourke remained where he was. The human advisory voice spoke once more. Outcome achieved, it said. No further action recommended. Rourke exhaled. The weight he had carried for years eased, not vanished, but shared. A junior officer entered quietly. Sir, she said, the feeds are stabilizing. The galaxies, recalibrating. Rourke allowed himself a thin smile. They will. He looked again toward Earth. Toward cities that would never know how close they had come to annihilation. Toward children who would inherit a galaxy no longer eager to test them. Humanity had never wanted to rule the stars. It had only wanted the right to exist without apology. Courtesy had been offered. It had been rejected. Now, peace would be enforced. And this time, the galaxy listened. The galaxy did not erupt after the war ended. It paused. Markets reopened cautiously. Trade lanes recalculated risk. Militaries revised doctrines that no longer applied. Across thousands of systems, analysts replayed 9 minutes of sensor data, searching for violence that never came. There were no burning worlds to study, no wreckage fields to mourn. Only absence, of fleets, of certainty, of the old assumptions that had governed power. Commander Elias Rourke returned to Earth without ceremony. The shuttle descended through atmosphere thick with clouds, friction glowing faintly along the hull. Below, oceans curved in patient blue, continents turning slowly into view. From orbit, Earth looked fragile. It always had. That illusion had protected it as much as any weapon. Rourke disembarked alone. No honor guard. No press. He preferred it that way. Inside the subterranean complex beneath Geneva, the council waited. Civilian leaders, military observers, scientists who had spent lifetimes ensuring their work would never be used. They stood when he entered, then sat in his gesture. It's done, the Secretary General said. Rourke nodded. For now. A strategist leaned forward. The Concord accepted everything? They didn't have alternatives, Rourke replied. Fear accelerates agreement. And the Dominion? They're intact, Rourke said. Humbled. Dangerous in the way wounded pride always is, but contained. Silence settled, thoughtful rather than tense. A young advisor finally spoke. Sir, why didn't we finish them? Rourke looked at her, seeing the question beneath the words. Why not ensure safety forever? Why leave a threat alive? Because endings matter, he said. We didn't want a warning remembered as a massacre. The Council absorbed that. Humanity's greatest strength had never been force. It was choice. Days passed. Then weeks. Rourke declined interviews, ignored commendations. He walked cities instead. Streets rebuilt over centuries. Parks grown where battle plans once assumed craters. People argued about ordinary things, prices, weather, sports, unaware that their future had narrowed to a knife's edge and been pulled back. One evening, Rourke sat on a bench overlooking Lake Geneva as twilight softened the sky. A woman approached, hesitant. "Commander Rourke?" she asked. He looked up. "Yes. My brother was on Haven Point," she said quietly. "He didn't make it." Rourke stood. "I'm sorry." She studied him, searching for something. "You could have destroyed them." "Yes. Why didn't you?" He met her gaze. "Because nothing would bring him back. And because if we become what we fear, the loss spreads." She nodded once, tears unshed, and walked away. Rourke watched until she vanished into the crowd, the weight settling deeper than any metal could. In the months that followed, humanity's presence in the Concorde changed everything. Patrols became preventative. Conflicts cooled before igniting. Species that had relied on intimidation learned diplomacy under supervision they could not challenge. High Marshal XYRRKAL addressed his people in a rare public transmission. His mandibles no longer flared with certainty. "We misjudged," he said. "Not their power, but their restraint." The message rippled outward, replayed across systems like a confession. 1 year later, the Concorde convened again. This time, Rourke attended not as a defendant, but as an anchor. The Arbiter addressed the hall. "We acknowledge humanity's role in preserving galactic stability." Rourke stood. "Preservation is temporary," he said. "Understanding lasts longer." A delegate asked, voice cautious, "What do humans want now?" Rourke considered the question. "To be left alone," he said. "And to step in only when that becomes impossible." After the session, the Arbiter spoke privately. "Your species altered the trajectory of the Concorde." Rourke inclined his head. "So did yours. You taught us patience." "And if the galaxy tests you again?" Rourke's expression remained calm. "Then we will respond again. Just as precisely." He returned to Earth a final time, authorization complete, authority transferred. Another generation would hold the line now. He had never wanted permanence. Standing once more beneath open sky, Rourke looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, fleets drifted free again, weapons inert by choice rather than force. Somewhere else, a child learned history differently than it might have been taught. Humanity had spoken softly. The galaxy had listened. And silence, earned, deliberate, heavy with consequence, settled across the stars, not as an ending, but as a promise kept.